Welcome to Wes's War. I am Tony Howells and this is a Wetfish Films production. Part 1, Training and HMS Repulse. Wes Wezencraft, as he was known in the Navy, is that he would have told you himself he was just an ordinary person, nothing special and definitely not a hero. According to Cyril, all the heroes had died during the war. He always paid his respects to servicemen and women he served with. In fact, all service personnel. It was very important to him and close to his heart. You may be wondering why I'm making this film about the ex-naval rating Cyril Wezencraft. He joined the Navy in 1936 and signed up for 12 years. He finished his term as an able seaman, seaman torpedo and coxswain. 12 years later he was demobbed. Yes, you're right, he served right through the Second World War. Not only that, but in some of the most dangerous waters around the world. When I lived in Stockton-on-Tees, I lived opposite his daughter, Joyce Wezencraft Atkinson, and her husband, Derek, and all their family. Wes, as he was known to his friends, and we became friends. I worked as an engineer for the Royal Navy at the Royal Navel Supply Depot, Eaglescliffe. At the time, the UK was engaged in the Falklands War. Wes found it easy to talk to me about his time in the Navy. I think to him I was a kindred spirit, I guess. He would talk about his younger days, especially his time serving in the Second World War. It all just came spilling out, and all I really did was listen. At some point in these talks, or at least Cyril talking to me, Cyril asked me if when he died I would scatter his ashes in the channel with his mates from the war. I replied, yes, of course I will, like you do with a friend. He said to me, I know you'll get the job done. If I leave it to this lot, meaning his family, I'll sit on the garage shelf for 10 years. Little did I know. Let's start at the beginning. Cyril volunteered for service into the Royal Navy on the 4th of November 1936. He was born on the 4th of March 1919, making him just 17 years old. According to his certificate of service, he was 5 foot 8 3/4 tall, with a 36-inch waist and light brown hair, grey eyes and a fresh complexion. So by today's standards, a slight man. However, take it from me, he was solidly built. Cyril signed up for 12 years service. He was accepted into the service on the 4th of March 1937, his 18th birthday. Prior to service, he was a pantry boy in Durham Castle. Cyril always said his days in the Royal Navy were the best of his life. He was so proud of the tradition that it brought. Cyril's basic training was completed in Portsmouth Depot, HMS Victory. You can see Victory here in this modern photograph in the foreground. It took place from the 4th of November 1936 to the 1st of June 1937, after which he was called an ordinary seaman, OS. Basically speaking, he had no seamanship skills, effectively an apprentice. He needs to gain the skills in sea time. He had exams, helmsmanship, standing watch, looking out, etc. He would have been trained by an able seaman until fully competent and qualified, after which he'd be a journeyman. Once experienced, he would have trained others, just as I did when I was a journeyman mechanic in my younger days. An indication of Cyril's pride, he kept his cap band from training at HMS Victory wrapped around his Bible, the only cap badge he ever kept. After training, Wes joined HMS Repulse from the 1st of June 1937 to the 3rd of January 1939. HMS Repulse was assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet when she recommissioned in April 1936. Repulse was a First World War warship, effectively old and outdated when Wes joined, lacking in good quality anti-aircraft and torpedo capability, but she had big guns, and remember, we were not at war yet. HMS Repulse was a renowned class battle cruiser with 15-inch guns, built in 1916, a well-established Royal Navy ship. She was in refit in Portsmouth when Cyril joined, after which she carried out harbour and sea trials. She was then recommissioned into service in the Mediterranean Fleet. Based in Malta, she took part in fleet exercises and visit programmes. Within the period of 8th June 1937 to the 4th of May 1938, Cyril carried out all his training and exams. He passed becoming an able seaman on the 5th of May 1938. Believe me when I say this is in short order, as he would have said. So let's be honest, he was smart, showing he was bright and very keen. HMS Repulse, June to December 1937, was involved in negotiations to release mercantile ships in Spanish waters, being held by the Spanish cruiser Miguel Cervantes. Fleet visit programme which I mentioned earlier. There is nothing in the ship's log about what it did, where and when. Cyril's photograph album tells a very different story of all the places he went with the Navy as a young man, how lucky he was. Gibraltar, Malta, Corfu, Athens, Alexandria, Cairo, Palestine, and remember, he's still only 18. Here we see photographs from Cyril's album. Nothing in the ship's log whatsoever about these visits, but these are the places he visited and saw for himself. HMS Repulse was sent to Haifa, Palestine, now in Israel, in July 1938 to maintain order during what was called the Arab Revolt. Following the publication of Peel Commission's report in July 1937, HMS Repulse sailed to Haifa, where landing parties were put ashore to maintain calm. Various other naval vessels continued with the role until the end of the revolt. Following the Irgun's detonation of a large bomb in the marketplace in Haifa of July 1938, the High Commissioner signalled the Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Fleet, Admiral Sir Dudley Pound, requesting the assistance of a naval vessel capable of providing landing parties. Pound dispatched HMS Repulse and diverted HMS Emerald to Haifa, which arrived the same day and landed with 5 platoons, one for each police district. HMS Repulse relieved HMS Emerald the following day, and after another bomb was detonated on the 10th of July 1937, 5 platoons from the ship, made up of sailors and Royal Marines, dispersed mobs and patrolled in the city. On the 11th of July 1937, provision of 3 platoons from HMS Repulse released men of the West Kent Regiment for a punitive mission against what were called Arabs who had attacked a Jewish colony near Haifa. By the 17th of July, HMS Repulse established a company headquarters where seamen and Royal Marines manned 3.7-inch howitzers. Sailors, Royal Marines and men of the Suffolk Regiment who had embarked from HMS Repulse accompanied foot patrols of the Palestine Police Force. HMS Repulse, Hood and Warspite, provided howitzer crews which were sent ashore to combat gun running near the border with Lebanon. Any detained local Arabs, as they called them, were used to build emplacements and fortifications, and the howitzers were moved quickly between these positions by day and by night, which confused the bandits, as they found it very difficult to understand where the direction of fire was coming from. Periodically, guns were used to fire warning rounds close to the vicinity of villages that they believed that held rebel sympathies. After Haifa, HMS Repulse was sent back to Portsmouth on Home Fleet deployment, where she was refitted once again with new anti-aircraft guns. Wes left HMS Repulse on the 3rd of January 1939. What can we say about Cyril's time on board for sure? Let's look at the map of his journey. Cyril's own records, he joined HMS Repulse on the 8th of June 1937. The ship's log, HMS Repulse, is not certain where the ship was when Cyril joined. I'd bet it was either Gibraltar or Malta. It is hard to say and we can't be sure or definite. June to December 1937, HMS Repulse was definitely in Spanish and French waters negotiating the release of shipping and helping refugees from Mallorca to Marseille, at which time Cyril was on board. They also carried out fleet exercises. January to September 1938 was the time for those visits that appeared in Cyril's logs and photographs that you saw earlier in the film, indicated by the blue lines on the map. From October 1938 to January 1939, HMS Repulse was in refit, back in home waters at Portsmouth, and Cyril came home. With the possibility of war and total uncertainty on the horizon, you have to be amazed at what this young sailor experienced and saw in such a short time. Thank you for watching this wet fish film, Wes's War.